Ethan Harper never expected a knock on his mansion door to change his life. It was Christmas Eve, the kind of night he had spent alone for years, surrounded by luxury, yet suffocated by silence. The last staff had left hours ago, and the only sound was the soft drip of rain against the windows and the faint hum of holiday lights across Beverly Hills. When Sophie Miller, his new assistant, hesitated in the doorway and asked if he would join her for dinner at her modest home, Ethan felt something stir inside him, something unfamiliar, urgent, and impossible to ignore. Tonight, everything could change. Ethan Harper had always celebrated Christmas alone, though no one would have guessed it from the exterior. The grand mansion perched atop the hillside of Beverly Hills gleamed with frost-like reflections from the city lights below. Yet inside, the silence was deafening. The last staff member had waved goodbye hours ago, leaving him with only a glass of imported whiskey and the weight of his own solitude. For 42 years, Ethan had built his empire brick by brick, driven by ambition. But every success had been paid for with isolation. No family traditions, no laughter filling the halls, just the echo of his own footsteps and the faint hum of holiday lights on the streets beneath his sprawling windows. He had convinced himself that this was comfort, that the solitude was earned and deserved. Tonight it felt like a waste. The soft click of the front door startled him. He hadn't expected anyone else. Standing in the doorway, hands clasped nervously in front of her, was Sophie Miller, his new assistant, a woman whose presence had been efficient, unobtrusive, and invisible for the past month. But tonight, something in her expression was different. She hesitated, biting her lower lip, then asked quietly, "Sir, would you like to come have dinner at my place?" The question was simple, but the way it carried itself, a blend of courage and innocence, made Ethan falter. He blinked, unsure whether to feel annoyed, amused, or unsettled. This was no ordinary invitation. It pierced through the armor he had spent decades perfecting. I have reports to finish," he said automatically, his voice attempting to mask the turbulence inside. It sounded weak even to his own ears. He had no reports, not tonight, not ever. Just the whiskey, the shadows, and perhaps a forgotten old movie flickering silently on the enormous television he rarely used. Sophie's eyes didn't waver. She looked past the wealth, past the polished floorboards, and the luxurious leather of his office chair, straight into the man he was, behind the reputation, the titles, and the empire. "The night is perfect for that," she said softly. Then almost impulsively she added, "I mean, no one should spend Christmas alone." Her words landed like a gentle slap against the walls Ethan had built so carefully around himself. Sophie's small home in a quiet corner of Beverly Hills was modest, painted a cheerful yellow with a jasmine vine climbing the front porch. Ethan had driven past it a few times without giving it a second thought, and yet suddenly it was all he could think about. The idea that someone lived there alone, yet willingly extended kindness to a man she barely knew, stirred something unfamiliar and uncomfortable inside him. In the controlled world of boardrooms and high-profile events, no one ever approached him like this. People were polite, they were calculated, they were opportunistic. But Sophie's gesture was genuine, unpolished human. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the car keys. The storm outside had begun, light rain tapping on the windshield, mirroring the rain that had once swept over a road in Denver, claiming the lives of Sophie's parents. He remembered hearing about the accident earlier that week when she had confided in him briefly, a tragic story she had told without self-pity, just a quiet acceptance of life's harshness. And now she had invited him into her world, into her small, honest life, and he felt unarmed, exposed, but also undeniably drawn toward it. Ethan parked a few blocks away, watching the small lights from her window flicker as shadows moved inside. He could see Sophie bustling around her kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and roasted cod drifting faintly into the street. His expensive suit was soaked within seconds as he approached, yet he didn't care. Every step toward that modest green door was a step away from the carefully curated existence that had suffocated him for so long. A single knock, and then her voice, tentative but warm. "Who is it?" Ethan cleared his throat, unnerved by how vulnerable he felt. "It's me, Ethan. I changed my mind." There was a pause, then the door swung open. Surprise washed over her features before she gave him a smile that lit up the dim hallway like Christmas lights strung across a simple suburban porch. Inside the house was cozy, every detail, a reflection of care rather than wealth. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, each ornament seemingly chosen with attention, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of Ethan's mansion. She moved gracefully, offering him a towel for his soaked hair and a robe to cover the expensive suit that no longer mattered. "I'm fine," he insisted, but allowed her to guide him toward the warmth of her living room. The aroma of home-cooked food enveloped him, stirring memories of dinners long past, of laughter he hadn't allowed himself to remember. They sat together, sharing modest portions of roasted cod rice and fresh salad. Conversation flowed naturally, revealing lives, losses, and dreams that had never intersected before. Ethan spoke reluctantly of his parents, of the years spent climbing a ladder built on sacrifice and solitude. Sophie shared stories of Denver, of her grandmother's inn, of lessons learned in resilience and kindness. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel the need to perform, to impress, to maintain distance. The walls of his mansion felt heavier in memory than ever before, and the warmth of this small home and the warmth of Sophie's presence made his solitude unbearable in its contrast. Hours passed. Rain faded to a gentle drizzle outside, the faint glow of city lights seeping through curtained windows. Ethan found himself laughing, letting himself be observed without pretense. He realized that the courage it took for Sophie to invite him here, and for her to remain open and unguarded, was more valuable than any deal or acquisition he had ever made. He noticed how she moved, how her eyes sparkled with quiet strength and wisdom, how the small gestures of generosity and grace cut through the polished veneer of his world like sunlight through a storm. The night stretched into an unexpected intimacy, a quiet revolution against loneliness. He had been given a glimpse of a life he hadn't known existed, one that could include connection, warmth, and something more than fleeting pleasure or status. As the clock approached midnight, Ethan felt something shift inside him, a subtle but undeniable change. He realized that he was ready to break routines, to abandon old defenses, to risk the uncertainty of human connection. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. Sophie was more than an employee. She was a mirror to his neglected humanity, a spark that challenged his careful isolation. He wondered if he would dare to step further into the unknown, to embrace a life colored by real emotions rather than numbers and contracts. The sound of a light knock at the window startled them. Both turned, eyes meeting, and a quiet understanding passed between them. The night was not over, and neither was the story. Ethan Harper, for the first time in decades, considered the possibility that Christmas could bring more than tradition. It could bring transformation. Would you, if you were Ethan, take that step and accept Sophie's invitation, risking comfort for connection? Yes or no? Ethan woke the next morning to the faint scent of coffee and something sweet he couldn't immediately place. The sunlight filtered gently through the blinds of the small guest room, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the cold emptiness of his mansion. He blinked, disoriented for a moment, piecing together the events of the night before. The simple yellow house, the soft aroma of cinnamon from Sophie's, cooking the way she had moved around the kitchen, as if the world belonged to her and no one else. Everything felt surreal, yet achingly real. He realized he had slept more deeply than he had in years, undisturbed by calls, messages, or the weight of a carefully maintained empire. From the kitchen came the faint hum of Sophie singing softly to herself, her movements fluid and effortless. Ethan hesitated at the door, unsure whether to announce his presence or to let her work in silence. When he finally stepped into the small kitchen, he was met with her easy smile, her hair casually tied up in a loose bun, and a simple apron dusted lightly with flour. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to dissolve the last traces of tension from him. "Did you sleep well?" Ethan nodded, barely trusting his voice. "Surprisingly well," he admitted, and she laughed, a sound so pure and genuine that it made him feel almost guilty for the luxury he had hoarded alone for so long. Sophie had already laid out a modest breakfast: French toast sprinkled with cinnamon and sugar, thick slices of toasted bread, fresh fruit, and 2 steaming cups of coffee. She poured him a cup and set it in front of him with an unceremonious confidence that made him pause. Here was a woman who had nothing to gain from him, yet everything about her demeanor radiated authenticity. Ethan, accustomed to flattery and calculated charm, found himself utterly unprepared for the sincerity in her eyes. They ate in silence at first, the comfort between them growing without words, a quiet intimacy that felt rare and fragile all at once. As he sipped his coffee, Ethan's mind wandered to the conversations of the night before. He remembered the stories Sophie had shared about her childhood in Denver, the small inn her grandmother had run, and the loss of her parents in a rainy night accident. Her words hadn't been sorrowful. They had been matter-of-fact imbued with resilience and acceptance. For a man who had built walls around his emotions, hearing someone speak with such unflinching honesty was both unsettling and liberating. Sophie had reminded him without even trying that life was fleeting and that time spent alone was a choice, not an inevitability. The morning stretched lazily as they moved from breakfast to conversation, their voices weaving through memories and small confessions. Ethan spoke of the early days of his business, the sacrifices, the relentless focus, and the emptiness it had brought. Sophie listened, asking questions with curiosity rather than judgment, occasionally offering gentle reflections that revealed a wisdom far beyond her years. She spoke of human connection, the lessons from her grandmother, and the importance of acts of kindness, no matter how small. The words resonated deeply with Ethan, stirring thoughts he had long buried beneath contracts, meetings, and social obligations. By late morning, a light drizzle had begun again, outside softening the edges of the cityscape beyond the windows. Ethan and Sophie decided to walk, allowing the rain to add a rhythm to their footsteps as they left the warmth of her home for the quiet streets of Beverly Hills. People scurried past with umbrellas, laughing or grumbling, absorbed in their holiday errands. Ethan felt a strange liberation in simply being among them, unnoticed, untethered by expectations or assumptions. He watched Sophie as she noticed the small details. Others overlooked a neighbor's wreath, a cat curled on a window ledge, the way a puddle reflected the holiday lights like scattered jewels. Her attention to life's subtle beauties reminded him of the simplicity he had ignored for decades. They found themselves at a small park nearby, the grass slick with rain, the air filled with the scent of wet earth and pine. Children played cautiously, their laughter ringing through the damp morning, and couples strolled hand in hand, sharing quiet conversations. Ethan watched Sophie as she stopped to inhale the aroma of a popcorn vendor's cart, a nearly childlike delight in her eyes. "I love this," she said softly, and he found himself smiling without realizing it. He bought 2 small bags of popcorn, insisting it's Christmas, and they walked together, sharing the simple treat, their silence comfortable, punctuated only by quiet laughter. The intimacy of shared space, unspoken understanding, and gentle conversation drew them closer. Yet the barriers of their worlds loomed silently between them. Ethan had lived surrounded by opulence, influence, and expectation. Sophie had built her life on simplicity, resilience, and self-sufficiency. And yet in these hours, neither seemed to notice the disparity, only the rare chance to connect with someone honest and unguarded. With each passing moment, Ethan felt the rigid walls he had constructed crumble imperceptibly, replaced by curiosity, admiration, and an emerging warmth he had long denied himself. As the morning turned to afternoon, Ethan hesitated before asking the question that had been building since last night. Would you join me tonight for another Christmas dinner?" His voice was careful but not rehearsed. Sophie paused, looking at him with eyes that flickered between surprise and quiet amusement. She could see the vulnerability in his stance, the rare honesty in his gaze. "Another dinner?" she asked softly. "I thought the first one was enough to... Well, I didn't expect it to mean anything." Ethan chuckled nervously. "It meant a lot. And I'd like to continue it if you're willing. I want to learn what it feels like to celebrate without the walls." Sophie considered him carefully, then nodded with a small smile, her expression a blend of warmth and caution. "Yes," she said finally, "I'll come, but only because you seem to need it as much as I do." Ethan felt a surge of relief and a lightness he hadn't known in years. The simple word yes carried with it a promise, a bridge between their worlds, and a chance for something neither could have anticipated the night before. As they walked back to her home, the city around them shimmering through rain-streaked streets, Ethan realized that the most unexpected gifts could not be bought or acquired. They were moments of connection, shared understanding, and human kindness. Sophie had opened a door he hadn't realized was locked, and with each step he was willing to walk through it. For the first time in decades, the holiday was not a reminder of isolation, but an invitation to hope. If you were in Ethan's position, would you trust someone new enough to open yourself to a night that could change everything? Yes or no? The evening came softly, a quiet serenity settling over Beverly Hills as Ethan Harper arrived at Sophie's modest yellow home once again. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the warm glow of street lamps, and the scent of jasmine from her porch carried faintly in the cool air. Ethan had changed into casual closed jeans and a simple sweater, feeling oddly vulnerable and unshielded. But for the first time in years, he welcomed the feeling. The rigid walls he had built around himself for decades felt unnecessary. here melted away by the warmth of human connection. Sophie opened the door with her usual grace, her smile lighting up the evening more than any holiday lights ever could. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said softly, and Ethan felt a surge of both relief and excitement. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied honestly. Inside the house was alive with a cozy energy, the table set simply yet lovingly, with the remnants of her home-cooked Christmas feast, roasted cod fresh salad, and the comforting scent of baked bread. A candle flickered in the center, casting shadows that danced across the walls and softened every corner. The simplicity of it struck Ethan. This was authenticity, warmth, and joy, compressed into a few square meters, far more valuable than any ballroom or gala he had ever attended. They sat down together, and for a long moment neither spoke. The silence was not awkward. It was a comfortable acknowledgement of presence, a rare gift Ethan had almost forgotten existed. Conversation began gently flowing from trivial matters to deeper reflections, the kind that unwrap old pain and leave room for understanding. Ethan shared memories of his parents, of the relentless pursuit of success, of the loneliness that had become habitual. Sophie listened with unwavering attention, her responses thoughtful and kind, not pitying, but empathic. She told stories of her own losses, of growing up in Denver, of her parents' tragic accident, and of the lessons her grandmother had imparted about resilience, kindness, and valuing the present moment. Every word resonated with him, piercing the self-imposed isolation that had defined his adult life. As the night deepened, laughter and quiet confessions mingled, bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. Ethan realized that Sophie had not only welcomed him into her home, but had invited him into her world, one built on sincerity rather than wealth or status. He felt himself changing slowly and imperceptibly, noticing how every gesture of hers, the way she poured wine, adjusted the chair across from him, or simply smiled at a shared memory, brought him a sense of warmth and possibility he hadn't felt in decades. Hours passed with the effortless flow of conversation and companionship, and as midnight approached, the distant sounds of fireworks began to echo from the city below. Ethan and Sophie stepped outside, walking toward the small park near her home. The streets glimmered with the reflections of colorful lights and puddles, and the air carried a fresh, almost electric charge, signaling a new beginning. Families celebrated, nearby couples strolled hand in hand, and children's laughter punctuated the quiet night. Ethan felt a profound sense of presence, as though he were truly participating in life for the first time in years, rather than merely observing it from a golden cage. They reached a park bench overlooking a small pond, the water reflecting the burst of colors from the fireworks above. Sophie sat first, Ethan joining her carefully. A family of ducks glided across the pond in perfect formation, a serene image that contrasted with the chaos of his past life. They spoke softly about dreams, fears, and the small joys often overlooked in pursuit of material gain. Sophie's honesty, courage, and unassuming nature revealed the kind of richness that money could never buy. Ethan felt inspired to reconsider what truly mattered, to embrace vulnerability and the possibility of genuine companionship. The countdown to the new year began in the distance, and Ethan turned to Sophie, taking her hands in his, their fingers entwining naturally. "Sophie," he began, his voice steady but heartfelt. "All my life, I've built walls to protect myself from disappointment, from judgment, from loss. I never realized those walls had trapped me instead. But your invitation, your honesty, your presence, it's changed me. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know I want to experience it with you. I think I'm falling for you." Sophie's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and emotion shimmering in their depths. She squeezed his hands gently. "Ethan, I feel the same. It's scary, yes, but it's real. I've never met anyone who made me feel seen in this way. I want to see where this goes too." The fireworks painted the sky in vibrant streaks as they leaned closer, sharing a tentative yet tender kiss. The world around them, the wealth, the social expectations, the distance between their lives faded into insignificance. In that moment, it was just Ethan and Sophie, two souls connecting over shared stories, courage in the simple act of being present. They embraced, laughed quietly, and for the first time, Ethan felt a profound sense of hope and belonging. As the first light of the new year crept across the sky, they walked back toward her home hand in hand. Ethan felt lighter, freer, and more alive than he had in decades. The mansion, the contracts, the business accolades, all of it seemed distant and hollow compared to the warmth he had found here. Sophie's smile, unguarded and genuine, reminded him that life's true riches were measured in human connection, shared moments, and courage to embrace vulnerability. For the first time, Christmas had brought Ethan more than solitude or reflection. It had brought him transformation, companionship, and the possibility of love. The lessons of the night were clear. Wealth alone could not fill the emptiness he had carried for years, but empathy, honesty, and courage could. Sophie and Ethan, once separated by circumstance and social worlds, now stood together, ready to navigate life, side by side, learning, growing, and embracing the unknown together. Now we want to hear from you. Did this story touch your heart? Do you believe that small acts of courage and kindness can change someone's life forever, yes or no? Let us know in the comments below. Tell us which country you are watching from. And if you like this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video is released. Share this story with someone you care about to spread the message of hope, connection, and the true meaning of Christmas.